I will talk loud so everybody can hear me in the back of the room. I'm kind of used to speaking in a room a little bit bigger than this to a group of Cub Scouts. So, all right, I'm Brian Wimsett, Systems Administrator for Reynolds School District. I've been there since 2015, November 2015, where when I started, I think we were about 11,000 kids, but I think we're somewhere under there now, between 10 to 11,000 kids, 17 to 18 campuses, only one high school though, but good sized school district, a lot of servers. And before that, I spent 15 years at the Harker School in San Jose, California, doing tech, not systems too much, but for the last couple of years I did, but it was good. Personally, I also am Cub Master for PAC 560 in Vancouver, Washington. Have 5 sons and mostly do stuff with them because it's a lot of that I have no free time to myself. So, yep. Now, how many of you are the guy or the face on the right? If your data center explodes, burns down overnight, or a server you can't pull up a server, it's crashed so hard you have to restore it. So if some major disaster happens, you have to either fail over to a disaster recovery site or restore the entire thing. How many of you would be on the guy on the right, scared, not sure what's going to happen? You're not really sure if your backups are good? Show of hands, anybody? Oh, that's good. Okay, how about the middle? You got some backups. You're going and replicating to DR, and if you have to restore or fail over your entire data center, it's going to be okay, but you're just kind of unsure, and you really don't want to test it. How many in there? All right. And then how many are the guy over on the left? You got backups. You're confident in your backup solution. You're just ready for a real world test, and you're excited. Anybody over there? All right. I'm the guy over there except for the excited part. I don't want to have to live through it. I'm confident. I know it's going to be okay, but it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm going to be, time away from my family and backing up making sure everything's good to go, and it just kind of weighs on the mind when something like that happens. Even if you're failed over to the DR site, you have to go home. It kind of weighs on the mind a little. So, want to talk about different concepts and types of backup. So the first part of this is more just talking about backup in general, not just what we do. And we want to talk about RPO, Recovery Point Objective. This is where your snapshots, your backups are. What point in time can you take that server back to? Do you need to restore a server back to 5 minutes ago, a couple hours ago, a week ago, 6 months ago, or even just pulling off a single file from any of those points? So how many points of recovery do you have? Your recovery point objective. RTO, recovery time objective. How long is it going to take to restore that entire server or fail it over to the DR site? Pull a single file up for that finance person who deleted their Excel spreadsheet and nobody can get paid right now. How long is it going to take to do that? Or even fail over your entire data center because of a major failure? How long would it take to do that? If you don't know the answer to failing over the entire data center, you got to test it. I can tell you that used to scare the heck out of me. But right now, where I'm sitting right now, my entire data center will fail over to DR in 1 hour. That's back up and running. All the servers are connectable. DNS is happy. All my critical systems within a couple minutes. My domain controllers and everything can be up and running. Within 15 minutes, all the major critical, everybody needs to use systems can be up and running. But it just takes time because I have a minute between each server turning on. So I also want to talk about different types of backup. Your full backup, it backs up every bit on that server, the entire server. That you only want to do every once in a while. You don't want to do that nightly. That takes up a lot of disk I/O bandwidth. Incremental backup is all the changes that have happened since that full backup or the last incremental backup. Incremental backups are awesome. And then we have differential. Don't know if anybody's actually using these anymore. I completely stopped using them. I really don't like them. What a differential backup is all the changes on the server that have happened since the last full backup. It doesn't care about incremental. It doesn't care about other differential. Any change that has happened since the last full. It's kind of an older way of doing backups. CBT, change block tracking. Change block tracking improves performance of incremental backups. CBT will identify the disk sectors altered between two change IDs, and now when the incremental backup happens, it only has to transmit the blocks that changed since the last backup and the blocks that are in use. This will also help save bandwidth and disk I/O, and I would not say that the proper way out of my head. So, synthetic full. This is a really, really, really awesome technology. I think other companies might call it something different. This is what Veeam calls it, is synthetic full, where it will take your last full backup or synthetic full, take all the incrementals, suck them in, and now you have one synthetic full backup. So I haven't had to do a full backup ever since the first one I've done. It just creates synthetic fulls every Saturday. So media types of backup. Tape. Tape backup is the old tried and true way of backing up your servers. It's slow. It's sometimes the older ones are loud. They take up a lot of space if you have a ton of them. But it's also nice because you can take them off-site, put them into a fire safe, so in case something happens, you have that backup. It's a hard tape backup, and it's also, another point, you're taking it away from your data center. So we also have SAN and NAS. SAN and NAS systems are really nice to back up to. They're faster than tape. They're pretty much where they live, whether it lives at another site or in your side of your main data center. It's rated in a RAID set, so that way it's pretty much protected. You can lose a disk or two depending on your RAID level, and you'd be okay. You just replace the drive, and you're chugging along. These days with 10 gig network and with good disk I/O, it's a good solution. You also have cloud backup. Cloud backup storage can be costly sometimes, and it really is relative to your cost, though. That's what we're going through right now. We currently do not have any cloud backup, but I'm looking into it and really got to weigh the cost of, cloud backup costs, but you're still spending electricity on your SAN, your server that has tape, whatever method you're doing, you're still spending money. So what does the cost really take? And then these systems are normally Amazon, AWS, Google, IBM Cloud is a recent one that I keep hearing, Microsoft Azure, or Microsoft Storage. And we also have primary storage. Primary storage these days can be a source of backup. A lot of the newer storage solutions like Datrium and Nimble And a lot of these other ones have actual good snapshotting within the system itself. It's not like the Equalogics that I have that I would never use snapshotting on those things. It's horrible. But yeah, the storage these days, and that's also nice because they can be deduped with your production bits, compressed and encrypted, and then it's much faster to have to restore something from your primary storage than any other location backup or anything, especially tape. You could also have a backup appliance. Backup appliances normally live within your production data center. Companies like Rubrik and Datadomain, and there's a few others out there, StorageCraft, a few others, that it's a second storage for your backups. It has a software that to do full incrementals and do all kinds of fun things. Those normally could also put information up to the cloud also. So when you're thinking about disaster recovery, backing up, replication, you got to think about how many copies of your data do you want or need, and location of that data. So your production data center, you could have multiple sets, copies of the data there, because you could have your production data, you could have snapshots within your primary storage, you could have appliance in your primary data center. But that if you had all three of those, say, that doesn't help you with another location. So if your production server room explodes for some crazy reason, you're out. All your backups are gone too. Replicating over to a disaster recovery site is highly recommended. It gives you another copy of your data and another location. Sometimes that could be up into the cloud, giving you a better location of maybe the cloud is somewhere on the west coast, on the east coast. But a lot of times the disaster recovery site's going to be another one of your campuses. Now, nightly backup site gives you a third copy of your data and another location for you to recover from. The cloud, with cloud backup, like I said, it can be a little costly, but you also have to think about, are you backing up just to cloud storage? It's just a drive up there in somebody else's server. You're taking up some storage on their space. Or do you want to actually spin up your server up in their cloud using something like VMC or another cloud hosting product? So that's something to think about. A lot of newer backup solutions will also pull bits from the cloud, only the bits that they need. So your backup server is replicating to a replication site, and you're backing up to the cloud, say, and you need to back up from 6 months ago, but your replication site only keeps 3 months, and you need to pull back that data. It's only going to pull the bits up from the cloud that it actually needs instead of the whole server, saving you some time and money there. Also, what do you care if your data is stored in some other part of the country? So if you're storing your data in AWS, do you care if it's up in Seattle at a data center? Do you want it on the East Coast at a data center because the ground doesn't shake over there? They have other disasters, but that was one of the big things for the IT director at my last school. If we're going to go to the cloud backups, we have to make sure our backups are somewhere in Connecticut because the ground doesn't shake and I'm scared of earthquakes. So it's just something to think about.
Also, do you care if it's in the United States or not?
I have not run into that, but you're right. Do you care if it's in the United States? I would. I'd rather my data be here and somewhere in the United States, and I'd be a little bit afraid of, the potential of somebody getting to my data somewhere else. So, disaster recovery site. There's a couple different kinds. Cold site. Your cold site will have servers turned off, saving power, ready to be turned on for a failover. You might be replicating data over there, so your storage might be on getting replication, or completely cold, and you have to take your data over there, whether it be tape or drives. That's your cold site. Your warm site is the site that has the servers are running, replicating over there, ready for you to press a button and fail it over, and then all of a sudden the servers go over there and start serving up the data from there. Your hot site is a site that's potentially doing asynchronous replication over there, running an active state, so that way no matter if they're accessing the data, it doesn't matter which data center it's coming from, and if one goes down, nobody ever sees it. But also it could be just running some servers over there on the hot site. What I like to call a hybrid site is what we do. I don't know if this is a true actual term, but so we at Reynolds, we have our disaster recovery site. I have six VM hosts at my disaster recovery site. 3 of them are off, so kind of like a cold site. They're off, ready for me. If I have to fail over, I turn them on, and then I have the processing power I need. 3 of them are on and replicating and ready for me to hit that failover button, kind of like a warm site. But I'm also running active servers off of those 3 hosts at the same time. So I have a redundant Radius server, a redundant wireless controller, a couple other redundant servers, a domain controller over there. So kind of like a hot site. So it's like a mix for us that works best for us. Oh, and a SCCM distribution point. I need that. I don't want that pulling from my data center, my main data center. So this is a graphic that Christopher Cusick over at Zylogics let me use. This came out of one of his books, and I saw it, and I really, really liked it. I thought it gave a kind of a nice visual graphic of all the things we talked about, what kind of site it is, replication, backup, and also the cost effectiveness of these solutions. A hot site is going to be expensive. You're using a lot of electricity, and you got servers that they could die, hard drives can die, and it gives a good visualization. I just wanted to thank Christopher and let you know, go see Zylogics. They do some really good things. They had a booth last night. I don't think they will tonight, but good people.
Right.
Yeah.
Question: in your hybrid site, you said you've got VM, 3 hosts on, 3 hosts off.
Yep.
But you are licensing for all 6.
Aha. I am licensed for 3.
Okay.
But in case of a failover, I don't need my production servers, so I basically am borrowing the licenses because they're not going to be on, and they're on a It's
okay.
It's someday I'll get to more licenses.
Will fail over.
That's what I didn't want to spend money on licenses that are just sitting there off.
All for efficiency, but that was
eventually, the only reason I have it that way, honestly, is because they're blade servers. So, and I don't need all the horsepower. I only need 3 of them on. And if I did fail over my entire server farm, which I have, I would need all of them. And then I just turn those on. I'm good. So this is a graphic I made where, in my opinion, this is the perfect solution of having 3 sites one, your production server, and you're replicating over to a disaster recovery site. And then in addition, you have nightly backups going over to a third site or to the cloud. This can be the cloud. And the backups can come from either production or from disaster recovery, because it depends on your school district, what you like. I do my backups from production because I want the latest. But in theory, if you're replicating over every 15 minutes for some, every half an hour for others, that's pretty good data too. And depending on your connections, if one site has a better connection than the other, it depends on what you want. Different companies that offer solutions for disaster recovery, backups. We have a couple here. Datrium is a primary storage company, and it also does snapshotting within itself. And it's not VMware snapshots, those ugly, hard to use things. It's snapshots that are done through an algorithm they have. And it's also deduped with your production bits, compressed and encrypted within the box itself. They also offer replication to a second DVX at your disaster recovery site, and they can push up all your backups into the cloud. That's who we use for our primary storage currently. I really, really like the technology. I like to think of it as I get hyperconvergent speed without the problems of hyperconvergence, because I have read cache within all my hosts, and all my reads come off of SSD on the hosts. All the writes go to a spinning disk on the box in case of a problem. It's, tried and true spinning disk, and I just love it. We also have Rubrik, which is a backup appliance that sits inside your data center. You go back up to it. It also offers dedupe, compression, and encryption. They offer replication to a second brick at a different site, and they also go up to the cloud. We have Veeam, which is a great piece of software. We use it heavily currently, and it offers backup to anywhere, any kind of device. The nice thing about Veeam is it's device agnostic. It doesn't care what you're using. If it will work with iSCSI, it will work with NFS shares. It will work with just being on a normal server. You could just use storage from any server. It's great, and yeah, replication, backup. It offers encryption. The dedupe on it's a little iffy, but it's a great product. Zerto offers timeline backup, so it's always backing up data, and you could go back in any point in time just by sliding a little bar and saying go back there. It was a really cool technology, and now they offer full and incremental. I think it's now, or it's coming really soon if it's not right now. Nimble storage also offers snapshots within the storage itself, replication to a second Nimble box, and going up to the cloud for backups. Dell EMC Datadomain. Everybody in this room probably has heard of them. They've been around forever. It was the appliance a while ago, and it's still around, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Reduxio is a primary storage company that does backups. They're always doing backups, a part of their solution, and they offer that timeline failover going back thing, kind of like Zerto does, but they're primary storage, and that's just what they do. Veritas Backup Exec. Most people have heard of Backup Exec. It's gone through a couple renditions. It was Veritas, then it was Symantec, then it was Veritas again now, Everybody I've ever met that uses Backup Exec or has, they liked it, and these days they don't like it anymore. So I don't know. StorageCraft is a backup appliance, and I don't know a tremendous amount about it. I do know my cousin uses it, and he loves it over his job. It's saved his bacon a few times, but I'm pretty sure it works a lot like Rubrik. So now we've come to the point where I get to tell my story. And yeah, we're 27 minutes in. Okay, we're good. So I started at Reynolds in 2015 and came in. The department was going through a huge shift. Got rid of a lot of the old regime. I came in to a kind of a new regime. New IT director. He was only there less than a year, and hired me. There wasn't a systems person there for over 5 years, is what I was told. There wasn't a network person at all, and really it has built the team. We built the team up real well now. But what I came into was server backups were happening with Windows Backup, part of the one built into Windows in 08 and all that. It was kind of a mess, backing up to a SAN there inside of the admin building. Then there was also this appliance that was a big mystery for a little bit, because half the team was calling it Renovex. Yeah, Renovetics. And the other team were calling it Eversync. And I was like, okay, I've heard of Eversync before, but okay, what is this box? I look at it, it's a super micro box with a bunch of drives in it. And when I finally got into the console, after searching through what little documentation there was, found out it was a piece of software called Infrascale 2000. And what is this thing? I started looking through it. It had some cool ways of backing up VMs and tied into VMs real well with our VMware. And then I started looking at it. It was Renovex And then they changed their name to Eversync. And then Eversync was bought by Infrascale. But that story kind of didn't sit well with me, so I knew I was going to have to replace that as soon as I could. So definitely got away from Windows Backup. Found quickly that Windows Backup only stores one night of backup. So they're telling me, oh yeah, we got months of backups, and I'm digging through it, and no, there's one backup for each of those servers. So I moved as much as I could over to the Infrascale, especially all the VMs, and started planning out what we're going to do. The nice thing about that Infrascale box, it had 16 terabytes of storage, so I at least had some kind of storage. So phase one of implementation was hardware refresh. I was lucky that the IT director, Jeff, had some funds left over from the previous person that we could spend some money and do a hardware refresh. So we were able to look at some new servers, some new storage, give us the ability to take what was in production now and use that in a DR site. So we're working with a Dell engineer, and the Dell engineer told me this story because I was new to the area. I didn't know much about a lot of the school districts in this area, what was happening in this area. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, so I don't know too much. But he told me this story that there was this local school district that had went through a problem of their data center, lost all their data, and completely their hard drive. He explained it as like their hard drives melted is pretty much what he explained it to be. And it didn't happen once, but it happened twice to them within a month or something. It just scared the heck out of me. I didn't understand how that could happen, but after learning it, it totally makes sense and why you need DR backup. So we started this plan of what to do for DR failover. We got 4 Dell R630s in. We got unfortunately an EqualLogic PS6210X for our storage. Nice thing about it had 10 gig network on the back end, so the networking was strong, and that works really well for our VMware setup. So we took our old production hardware as a blade chassis and 2 EqualLogic SANs, took that over to MESD for our failover site, our DR site, and started replicating. That's also when I looked at replication software and thinking about, okay, how am I going to replicate that data? So at the time I looked at Zerto, I looked at Veeam, and also talked with our director and found, oh yeah, we just did a hardware refresh. We don't have money to buy replication software. And then it had to think about, I'm not at a private school in Silicon Valley anymore that has unbelievable amounts of money. I'm at a public school, and budgets are a real thing. So started looking at VMware Replication and started doing the vCenter replication. Not SRM, that nice, cool product that VMware makes, and you can actually fail over with a button, and you can set it up and orchestrate it. No, that costs money too. And also, when looking at that, started looking at the money it would cost to buy that versus buying Veeam or something in the future. It just didn't make sense to me to spend the money. So I set up the built-in vCenter replication. With doing that, I had to manually do anything with failovers. So I could set up, so I could fail over each server with one button, but then I'd have to go into the server, change DNS, change IPs manually. But hey, it worked. And I was okay, because if something happened, I'd be okay. I'd just spend hours of my time making it work. So I was happy. It was awesome. Oh. Move production to... So yeah, our old production was DR, vSphere replication, manual process. I need to do this. So I moved the InfraScale box and our old SAN that we were doing Windows backup to over to the high school. So that way I have a third site to do backups to. So I was mostly using the InfraScale, but hey, now I got a third site. So I had stopped using Windows Server, yeah. And then I wanted to get completely away from the Windows backup because I really didn't like it. So I came up with, I need a open source product to do some backup. And I found UR Backup, which is works really well. It takes some manual configuration, and you have to do things yourself. It's open source, but it worked really well for us. I did all my physical server backups using that thing over to the SAN, and hey, it did multiple backups. I was able to do and keep backups way better than the Windows one, so I liked it, and it gave me my 3 sites at that point. So I was production center inside of our district office data center, disaster recovery at MESD, nightly backup at the high school. You know, it worked if something came down to it. Also, didn't want to test it. No. Now, I actually got some money, put it into the budget, and now got some to be able to look at solutions for backing up. And we did a big RFP and went with Veeam. Veeam really, really, really helped because now I have orchestrated actual way to fail over my entire data center with one button. It handles replication way better than the vSphere replication ever did. It does backup way better. Get rid of that UR backup thing that I was using, and being able to actually have that peace of mind. Marty came out, hooked us up, got us working. He'll be at the Veeam booth later. And the biggest thing was the being able to tie in with the orchestration of failover, the IP change and the DNS server registration. So if I have to fail over, it changes over to this IP that I set. I want it to use this IP at my disaster recovery site. It works over there. And I want it to register with my DNS servers, which it does really great, actually. Now, one day, we had a major power outage at our district office data center out of nowhere in an afternoon, and we're scrambling trying to figure out what's happening, and calling the power company, and I'm looking at the UPSs trying to see how long we got. You know, we got 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, Jeff's finding out from the power company what's going on. Find out, they're working down the road on a house, and they're not going to have the power back up. So I was like, okay. But by the time we found that out, it was close to being dead. So I'm driving over to MESD to fail over our stuff. And by the time I get there, our production has died. And then I go to fail it over, and it won't work. So I call Veeam and found out, okay, well, I put our Veeam backup server at the disaster recovery site like they told me, and it was great. But there was two major design flaws that I did. To save some money, I used an SQL, another server that had SQL already because I didn't want to buy another SQL license. And that server lived in production. So, Veeam can't talk to its own database. And what was the other thing? Oh, yes. The vCenter server lived on production. So it couldn't talk to vCenter to actually orchestrate anything also. Two major design flaws that even one of them wouldn't have made it work, but I did both because I just felt like that would be fun to do. So the next day, we bought a brand new SQL license, moved over that SQL database to the same server as the Veeam server. And also, I moved over the vCenter server over to the DR site. So now my Veeam SQL database is living at DR. My vCenter server is living at DR. I'm happy. It's gonna work great next time. But then Jeff starts talking. Actually, it was me, Jeff, and Nathan. We started looking at, we don't have a generator. What's it going to cost to get a generator? Has anybody actually looked at what costs of generators, especially for a data center? It's, oh my gosh. I couldn't imagine the prices that we were being told. But Jeff was talking over to Eric Harrison over at MESD, and why don't we move our production to MESD? Okay, it's not going to cost us anything extra. And at first I didn't like the idea because I couldn't really fathom not being next to my data center. My production server's not in the room next to me. But I got over it, and we moved over our data center, our production over to MESD, moved our disaster recovery over to the district office, and basically just did a swap. Still replicating. We're good. And now our production server has 2 generators, and I have an awesome, good team over there that if something beeps on me and it didn't, for some reason it didn't alert my phone, they'll tell me. So,
Question.
yeah.
So where your DR had been now becomes your production?
Yep.
Because you moved there. So you don't have a DR separate site?
Well, the DR site, I moved the DR hardware over to our district office. So basically just did a swap. So moved production to DR, DR to production. So basically swap the roles and we're good.
So do you once again, so did you leave the vCenter at MESD and
No.
Veeam at MESD? Okay.
So no, those are still, they're at our district office.
Because it still gives you one point of failure.
Yeah.
That's the consideration.
Yeah. But if production dies for some crazy reason, I can fail it over and we'll be okay. So it's nice. It works well for us. We don't have a generator still at DR, but the chances of something major happening at MESD and taking our production down is greatly reduced. They're tied into the bedrock there at that building, and if they go down, pretty much our entire internet goes down anyways. So I can get our district office running again. You know, they could use their applications because they'll be in the same building. So
They are 3 miles from the international airport.
that's true. Yep.
It's mild concern.
So, yep, I stopped, when I got the Veeam, I stopped using the InfraScale box completely and turned it into an NFS share. So my nightly backup site, I'm using an NFS share and an iSCSI share and another share inside the server itself, setting it up so that way it's a scaled out way of doing it. The production hardware at MESD moved, okay, yeah. So I started having major bandwidth issues and storage issues with Veeam. The bandwidth issues is, if anybody uses Veeam in here, you know, it's gonna suck the pipe that whatever you give it. We had a 1 gig connection. I had to just throttle it down. We're okay after that. But I'm having major storage issues. That awesome EqualLogic box that I got with the good network, it's just, the Veeam is just killing the storage. And started looking at it more and looking at it of, okay, it's capped at 35,000 IOPS in that box because of the disk I/O. So it really was killing us. I saw Bryce and Andrew from Datrium at a show and started talking to them about it and like, okay, what can they do for us? And Bryce knew exactly what I was talking about. He called it the Veeam stun of storage, and he said that that's also why a lot of people bought Datrium to fix that, and as soon as they did, it fixed their problems. So started putting it into the budget to replace our storage and did a RFP for our storage and looked at 7 different companies. I kind of casted a wide net because I wanted to make sure we got the best storage for the best price. And then it was Datrium that we went with. So now our third site, we have production at MESD, disaster recovery at the district office, nightly backup at the high school, running Veeam. I'm actually super, super happy about it. I'm going to skip that right now. If I have time, I'll show you the Veeam demo. Plus, I don't know, can you actually see that? This is a screen that's way smaller than I thought it'd be. I thought I was going to be on a screen like the ones that they have up there. So I might just skip that completely. So phase 2.5 of my improvement plan was to get a new storage to get rid of that Veeam stun and Datrium as soon as we put it in, it fixed all the problems. All of our latency went away. SCCM queries happened instantly. It used to take a minute and a half, 2 minutes for a query to open. Now you click it, it's open. It just works great. Especially that SSD host on the host, all reads coming off that SSD. So yeah, we did a POC with Datrium, worked great. We're happy. I go from a cap of 3,500 IOPS on the EqualLogic up to 200,000 IOPS with the Datrium. And that's just the normal cap. If I hit insane mode, it pretty much doubles that. The one caveat to it is insane mode uses your CPU like crazy on the VM hosts. But hey, I'm happy. As soon as we got the Datrium put in, our IOPS went to an average of 7,500. So we were about half of what we needed to be with that EqualLogic box. So it was really, really good that we went to something that can really handle it for us.
And just to clarify, the EqualLogic had no flash in it.
That EqualLogic, no, there was no flash in the EqualLogic. It was spinning disk. It was there were 10K drives, but still, it's just
same exact situation. We've got the same exact box, and yeah, we've experienced the same thing.
Yeah,
you got to have some flash there if you want any speed.
Yeah, exactly.
And that line won't ever do it.
Nope. That's why we had to get rid of the EqualLogics for production. So I moved the old EqualLogic over to the DR site to give us a better SAN than we had at the DR site. The EqualLogics that we did have at the DR site were, one was limited to 4 gigs and the other one was limited to 2. So giving at least the 10 gig EqualLogic over to DR helped at the DR site. And it's under warranty, so I'm happy. I then also set up protection groups inside of my Datrium DVX box. So that's where it does the snapshotting within the storage itself. So that gives me now a fourth data point to back up, restore from, and it's really nice actually. It's a lot faster to back up to restore a file or even an entire server. I was actually just talking with Angela before this. There was a day where I had to restore my SCCM server. My SCCM server sits around 2 terabytes, and I restored it with Veeam because that's what I was used to, and it took 4.5 hours to restore it. The next day I thought, why did I just do that when I have Datrium protection turned on? It was only a couple weeks after I turned that on, and I wanted to try it, so I cloned my SCCM server, and it restored as a clone in a minute and a half. I should have just done that in the first place, because it's really nice. It doesn't need, those snapshots don't need all of the bits. It just uses what's in production and just copies over what was the change, the stuff that's not there anymore, the old changes. So we do have a NAS coming this summer to our nightly backup to increase storage over there, because while I have 32 terabytes at the nightly backup storage, that kind of filled up pretty quick, a lot quicker than I thought it would. It's amazing when you're backing up nightly and you want to restore that archival data, how much space you need. So we have a NAS coming, a cheap NAS. It's a cheap box and some 14 terabyte Iron Wolf drives. 4 of those in there will give us some good storage. It's going to be really, really nice.
Brian,
yeah.
What's your retention on backups? How long are you retaining for?
That's a good question. With my storage issues. I wasn't getting the historical and the retention I wanted at DR site, the nightly backup site. And now I'm using my Datrium to give me that. So if I need to pull a file from a year ago, I'm pulling it from my Datrium box. So that's the thing. All the servers that are considered critical or have data that we really couldn't live with, we're doing a year of retention. Anything that's a normal thing. It's 6 months. Or 8 months. 8 months we're going to be doing retention. So, and that's all. I'm using currently our Datrium for all of our retention because it's there. It's deduped with the production bits. It's just kind of makes sense.
It's an interesting question to ask, though. For example, we've got a server that handles the lunch lines. Like, what use is data from 6 months ago?
Yeah.
You're not going to,
Exactly. And the nice thing is that you could set it differently. You could set different retention policies depending on the type of server. Especially something like Veeam, you can set that out so that way, these are set into a different group that's doing the nightly backups, and that retention's only, maybe a month. But you could set them up to be different retention times. Same thing with my Datrium box is I have protection groups set to be different times. And actually I have a demo of it. But I don't think I'll be able to get to that, or you might not be able to see it. So this is my Datrium within my vSphere client. So inside the shortcuts, we have my Datrium. Click it, it comes up. And gives me a nice window. It lets me know if I have any errors, which I have a couple warnings on here just so I can show you. It has, what my IOPS are, my throughput, and then also we have the protection tab. The protection tab is what I wanted to show you today inside my Datrium box. It has all these different groups grouped out. Application servers, critical or non-critical or normal, web servers. Also, you could do replication over to a second DVX, and basically just goes through all your settings. Now in here, come on myself. I made it a video. I don't trust live demos. I don't know if any of you do, but I don't trust them. So I could select individual VMs or if I want, or I could do name patterns, all kinds of cool things I can do. But something with a normal one, I capture every hour, keep those for 24 hours, then I capture a daily, keep those for a week, then I do a weekly, keep those for a month, then I do a monthly, and keep them for 8 months for the normal. With the critical systems, or what I call critical, I'm doing every half hour, and then every hour, and then every day, week, month, for a year. And
how much storage are you talking about?
That's kind of the nice thing about having the storage within the primary storage is it's only the protection groups is only keeping the changed bits and leaving. So if it's the same bits that are in production, it doesn't need to back those up. It doesn't need to take a snapshot of that. Your Windows directory, it doesn't need to keep that in the protection space because that's in production. So it's actually just a fraction of my storage is taken up by snapshots with this because it's deduped, compressed, and encrypted.
So how much production storage do you have versus how much backup storage?
Within the Datrium box itself, I have about 50 terabytes of production, and what was it? snapshots. I'm using about 20 terabytes of production out of the 50, and the snapshots I believe were about 4 to 5 of that. So, what does the future hold for us? Definitely a second DVX coming in the future, so that way we can replicate over and stop using Veeam replication. So the nice thing about the Datrium is that with the replication over to a second DVX, it's completely encrypted in flight at rest. I don't have to worry about that, and I can get to asynchronous replication, which is something I kind of dream of. Right now with Veeam, some servers are doing 15 minutes, some are doing 20 minutes, some are doing half an hour. Some, because I just don't see the need, are doing it once a day. It's depending on the server. The backup to the cloud, or is it possible maybe get rid of that third site and go up to the cloud as the hardware at the high school dies? It's a question that we don't know the answer to, but we're entertaining it. Like I said earlier, the cost of running older hardware, sucking the power at that third site versus spending the money in the cloud. The cloud is getting cheaper and cheaper here and there. By the time we make that decision, we'll have to weigh the options. Do we keep or get rid of Veeam? I don't know the answer to this whatsoever. I love Veeam. I'm a huge advocate for them. I think you should go talk to the people at the booth. But when I did our storage refresh, I purposely made it so that way whoever we went with had a way to do backup and get rid of Veeam if I wanted it. Replicating to a second site using a second box of theirs, and then replicating or then backing up to the cloud. Datrium does it, Nimble does it, a lot of the other Pure does it, a lot of them do. And that's really what I wanted to be able to give the school district, is the option. I didn't want to lock us into Veeam forever if I didn't have to. We bought 3 years, and it's a decision that we had to do, and I love it. But I don't know if I want to keep it. DR site in the cloud. I love the idea of doing my DR site up in the cloud. I don't know if I would like the price, but it would be kind of cool to replicate up into the cloud, and if I have to fail over, I'm running my servers up in the cloud, and I don't have to have a second site. And if I did something like that, then I would have two of my sites up in the cloud. I'd have my disaster recovery site there. I'd have my nightly backup site probably on another one, and it's kind of a cool idea. I don't know if I'd like the price point, but hey, it's an option these days. And actually, a couple years ago, that wasn't an option. The VMC and other cloud hosting services are way better than they were before. So after listening to my talk and my speaking at you, is anybody over here now on the right scared about your backups after what you've heard? No? Okay, good. How about the middle? Anybody still there? All right. Well, we want you to get over to the left. We want you to be that guy, that girl, that person that's confident in your backup solutions. You're maybe not excited. It's hard to be excited to go through an event like that. But if you had to go through it, you're okay. You're not worried. You're not stressing. You're not losing sleep over it. And I added my email. You guys can get a hold of me if you have any questions and want to talk about anything. If you're looking at storage, I could talk about Datrium. See me tonight. You want to talk about Veeam? I love Veeam. You could talk about it tonight. I highly suggest going and talking to all the companies that are out there. When looking at any of these products, I am a big fan of looking at as many as you can, getting a demo of every one that you can. maybe even a POC of all of your top contenders. There's a bunch out here. Rubrik's here, Veeam's here, a few others. Datrium was here last night. Any questions? Yes, sir.
We talked about backups and redundancy and fault tolerance. Do you ever test backups and delete files on purpose and back them up somewhere else and then restore them?
Yes.
So that makes sure that the backups are actually clean and...
Yes.
Okay.
So I have done that manually before, plus Veeam has a really nice built-in way to do that itself. Now all of a sudden I'm blanking on the name of it.
Sure backup.
Yeah, Sure Backup. Sure Backup's great. It gives you a report of what happened, how it happened, what failed. I have a couple servers that maybe aren't the healthiest servers. They're a little old. I'm kind of itching to replace them this summer. They fail every time, but I know that the data's backed up. It's just that it couldn't pull the server up and, make sure it's running.
And it does it to be you're a technical crowd. It mounts the backup in a sandbox. It masquerades the IP addresses so it fits in the network, and then it runs whatever you've chosen to test. Like we have one that's a domain controller. It tests the port is open and responding. It tests the global catalogs. That's really all it's testing. You kind of test file integrity. It takes some time to do.
Yeah.
But as you said, the synthetic full happens on Saturday. Well, that's what we run on Sunday. Is the Sure backup.
Yeah.
And occasionally it fails, and it's usually something like, the password you gave has changed. I mean, sometimes it's very simple. It's a pain to track it down, but it's worth, because then you can tell your boss, yeah, we tested it.
Yeah.
It's not the same as completely pulling in, but it's better than anything else out there. It's really what Veeam's used to differentiate themselves. So that'd be interesting to see if anyone else has that, if you're looking at going, the actual automated testing that it really does.
It's nice. I do it weekly and monthly. The weekly happens with all of my, what I consider critical servers. And then my monthly happens for every server. And it shoots me out a report. Also...
Well, I know what was breaking, just a tidbit. What was breaking ours was Windows updates that hadn't been applied. Because it has built in the script certain timeouts to wait for things like 30 minutes before it tries the test, so it's fully up. And Windows backups will throw that off, and because it'll try to install or at least put up a notification, and then you So it was a case of I had to up the timeout basically before it ran the script.
Yeah, then I believe it was spring break. I did a complete DR site failover. I turned off. It was a day where there was no kids, no teachers. No, it was a day that everybody was off completely in the district. I came in, turned off production completely, failed it over, and it literally took an hour till everything was up and running at our DR site with a new IP and DNS. Failing it back took about twice the time because the funny thing about Veeam is when it fails over, it ties into DNS and updates the IP, but when you fail it back, it doesn't do that. So you have to wait for DNS to actually take the time to update DNS and replicate through your DRs, your domain controllers, but it was okay. I mean, I was in there. It was like half a day of work, and I got to make sure that I'm good and happy. And before I did that, we weren't that strong before. As you saw, I mean, it would be a lot of manual work before we got Veeam and got this tested.
How's the support?
Veeam support's great. They really help you, and it's been one of the better supports I've had. Same thing with the Datrium support too. It's been amazing.
Does Datrium support Hyper-V?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They only do VMs though.
Oh, that's one. Okay.
Yeah, they don't do physical, right? Is that Angela?
Yeah.
Correct. Yes. So that's the one thing, is that it's only VM. So Hyper-V or VMware vSphere, either way, but it has to be virtual.
Not Hyper-V.
Are you concerned at all about? Doesn't sound like there's actually a true air gap for any of your backups. So there's nothing that's truly offline that ransomware couldn't possibly get to. I mean, it's just it's a discussion point. I'm not
Yeah.
not be paranoid about it, but
Yeah, Veeam claims really that they have their ransomware. They're protected against ransomware. I don't know if I believe it 100%.
Well, it's actually Veeam's own blogs that bring up the issues. Like, if you don't have a storage vendor in the cloud that truly it truly is not automated to re-engage that, then you don't have that. Theoretically, if your account got compromised, someone could actually delete all the directories of your backups, at least.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a problem looking for. There are multiple attempts to do this. Like, you don't actually fire up the computer, the server. There's lots of
Yeah.
into that, but it's like, what do you do to make sure you've got a backup that cannot be automatically deleted or encrypted on you? Which is, Veeam will tell yourself it's happened to backups even.
Okay.
But yeah, it's
The key thing is that if it's online, it could be compromised, right? That's why tapes, people keep talking about the old-fashioned tapes, they're offline.
That's
why tapes are being used heavily still, is that point. Nice thing about the snapshots within the primary storage is at least it's encrypted. So I'm pretty sure that those are protected pretty well. And between my multiple points of backup, I'm pretty sure I would be okay in a ransomware attack, but I don't want to test that at the same time.
Well, they're encrypted, but if you can turn off snapshotting, so can ransomware.
That's true. That's true.
But those snapshotting has been, I think, in some cases, an overlooked thing by the ransomware that people gotten stuff back from. So I don't know. Multiple layers of protection, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's exactly it. How many copies of your data, and how many locations, and where your locations are. There's a good point of, if we had something up in the cloud that is password protected, and we're not mapping it to a local computer, like I heard at the session before the keynote. That was a point in the session I was in before the keynote was, the guy was backing up all of his servers to the cloud, but he had it mapped on his local computer. They were able to get into the cloud and encrypt all his data. So you got to make sure you're doing the best practices, but ransomware is just a scary thing.
And you had a perfect demonstration about what you discovered in your earlier tries, but it was only recently I had stated so obviously your disaster recovery cannot be dependent on anything it's trying to recover.
Yeah.
If it's dependent on Active Directory and you don't have Active Directory, you're in a problem. If it's dependent on your SQL server, it's got to be standalone. So questions like, is your Veeam server in Active Directory or not? Do you want it in Active Directory or not? Do you want it in a virtual machine or not? Those are like, it's...
Yeah.
So that I don't know the answer to those questions. But it's like, watch your dependencies, but testing will turn those up too. It's like, be paranoid. And if everything goes right, no one will notice it. That's the nice thing about it.
Right, if you don't have a generator, does your system, the minute there is a power outage, does your backup start shutting down the system systematically and properly?
Yes.
And you have enough time to shut down everything within, I don't know how much time you need to shut down everything.
Yes.
Okay.
That I have it with the UPSs are tied into the vSphere, so that way, if there's a power issue, it'll start kicking off the virtual servers to shutting down, and then it'll shut down properly in a certain order. It's kind of a nice way to do it. Yeah.
Things back on, you gotta make sure the DNS server is going on back first.
Oh yeah, I know.
In there.
Yeah.
Or everything about IP address and not names.
Yeah, we had a couple of staff got bit by ransomware, but one policy we strongly implemented about a year and a half ago was no shared drives. So no network shares other than your home folder get a drive letter. Period. And so far, ransomware, pretty easy to code in 26 drive letters, go through these and infect them. But it's a much harder hurdle for ransomware to start sniffing out UNC paths.
That's
that type of
UNC
thing.
stuff letters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we do not allow shares, departmental shares, that type of thing to be represented by a drive letter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We actually do have department shares mapped with drive letters. It's something I want to fix, but
Yeah, we're kind of holding off on Google Team Drive
yeah.
because it maps to Drive G.
Oh yeah.
So we've asked them.
Yeah, we're looking at possibly going up to OneDrive for our user shares instead of. Cause currently, we're still using server storage, and that's not fun. And we're just looking at maybe going up to OneDrive. It doesn't do a drive letter, so that's nice. Anything else, anybody?
I'd be curious just to know how many people do use Veeam in the work.
Anybody use Veeam?
It's pretty popular.
Cool. Yeah, it's a great
Any other
product.
ones you want to pull?
Yeah,
Datrium?
yeah. There's not. Has anybody looked at Datrium ever?
I'm looking at it.
Okay.
Are you running Datrium on their appliances? Because we're an Intel shop. We're actually an Intel channel partner. So we have basically 6 really big Intel servers, 24 spindles on each server.
Yeah.
And we're running DFS, 3 different sites.
Yeah.
So we're kind of your hybrid model.
Yeah.
In some senses, although you have some great ideas that we'll definitely probably do.
No.
But from what I understand, Datrium can operate as software on our hardware, which we'd be interested in. Are
I have
you
not
using
seen
their
that.
hardware?
No, I'm using their hardware.
Okay.
So I'm using their storage box, which is spinning disk, and then 2 terabyte SSDs inside of each of my hosts. So I have 4 hosts, and each of them have a 2 terabyte SSD inside of them.
Okay.
It's SATA, and it runs really well. All my reads come off of SSD. I have a 99% average hit rate off of SSD.
The SSD. Nice.
So it helps a lot.
Sure.
But yeah, I've never heard of it being run off of drives inside of your servers before.
Okay.
Other than the cache.
Okay.
So that would be a question for
them.
yeah. And they have great people, great techs. So they should be able to answer.
Cool.
So all right.
You're right at 2.
All right. Cool. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.